Hello, wonderful. It is Sarah, and I'm here with Tina Swithin, and she is the author of One Mom's Battle. She's a high conflict divorce coach, has a certification program, author, family court advocate, and apparently my new friend, my new best girlfriend, because we were chatting it up before this worked. We were like, oh, we align on this, we align on this, we align on this. So this is going to be a great conversation for you guys. Hey, Tina, how are you?
Hi, good. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so sad for the people who are not watching this on video, that they cannot see your background if they're just listening to the podcast. You've got all these lovely sunshiny lemons. And when I was a kid, ever since I was a kid, I would eat straight lemons with salt. So it's surprising I have any enamel on my teeth.
Right.
Yeah, but I love them. So I love your background. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah, it's very much, I have this lemon to lemonade theme in life. And so so my whole office is lemons, and people send me lemon stuff and lemonade stuff. So it's neat. It's cheerful.
Well, tell us about, how you help others turn lemon into lemonade, especially in this journey of the One Mom's Battle.
Yeah, so I refer to myself very much as the accidental author and advocate. I never intended to set out on this journey or to be known for divorcing a narcissist. Who wants that title? But back in 2009, I found myself forced to represent myself in family court, to act as my own attorney due to severe financial abuse from my ex-husband. And went from this gated community, and I call it my fake fancy life. It was all a facade, to a women's shelter. And it was some of the darkest days of my life. But I found myself acting as my own attorney in a 10-year family court battle. It ended up being 10 years, but about 2 years into it, I was so frustrated by the reality of the court system, that they were not prioritizing my children's rights to be safe, and that my ex-husband's parental rights seemed to trump my kids' safety. And so I started a blog, and I titled it One Mom's Battle, and had no idea that anyone outside of my close friends and family would ever read it. And I was somewhat discovered, I guess you could say, by Christy Brinkley, who was going through a divorce with a narcissist back in 2011. And we connected. She invited me down to LA, basically said, you have to take this blog and turn it into a book. People need something tangible, because there are so many people suffering in silence. And back then, it was so true. There were no resources. There were no support groups for people divorcing high conflict people. And so I wrote a book, and that turned into 5 books. And through this journey, I've gone on to be successful in protecting my kids. We terminated parental rights a year ago, which is almost unheard of. And I've taken everything that I've been through, and I use it to help other people, to help them, in the family court system, especially victims of abuse. We are guided by emotion. Nature intended for us to protect our children. And you walk into that broken family court system where there's a bunch of narcissists behind the bench and in the system in general. And, your hands are tied behind your back. You're not able to do what nature intended for you to do as a parent. And
that mama bear, right? Like that mama bear protective stuff. Yeah.
Right. And so I know for myself, the first 2 years, I was, so focused on feeling validated or getting justice in the court system, and guided by emotions when your kids are continuously put in harm's way. And so, I understand how it's hard for people to get into a strategy mindset. And that's what I tell people is so important when you're in this type of, mainly child custody battle is what I focus on.
Right.
You have to be operating from a strategy mindset at all times, because you've got a narcissist who thrives in the family court system, in that type of environment, it becomes a stage for them. It's their platform, where we are, over here shaking in the corner. But, getting into that mindset of being strategic and, operating still from your place of authentic truth, who you are as a person. But, you can't be guided by emotions, which is easier said than done. And so it's a lot of the work I do to help people figure out, what is your strategy? Where is your leverage with this person? And how do you use that to your advantage to protect your kids?
So there's about 14 things you said right there that my listeners are going to want some more information on. So I'm going to break that in. And I love the concept of strategy. And even in healing, because I help people design lives they're excited about living after a toxic relationship. Okay. So I say, what's your healing strategy? And they're like, what? I'm just trying to feel better. Okay. So what's your healing strategy? So that language is going to be very familiar with my listeners. And court is not the place to, I know we think about it as being a place of justice, but it's not the place to get your validation. That's a bad strategy, right?
Yes. I get it, because I can go back in time to 2009 when I was sitting in the courtroom, and I knew who this toxic person was, and I knew how dangerous he was. But now that I have the ability to look at it through a different lens, because I spend a lot of time pre-COVID sitting in the courtroom and observing or being there just to support people, when I try to explain to people, the judge doesn't know either of you. And you may, how many years did it take you to see behind this person's mask? The court, they come at us with somewhat of a victim blaming mentality. I remember my judge looked at me and said, you chose to marry this guy. You chose to have 2 children with him. It's not our job to fix your issues, and they're very much in the position of being referees. And I think people have, you have to manage.
Rather than saviors. May I add that? They're referees rather than saviors. And I think when you've been through something like that, and it's like, well, now I'm going to take it to court and they're going to save me, or they're going to save this situation. And then women can lose a lot of money and lose a lot of time and lose a lot of self-esteem in that process, correct?
Right. And when you're trying to, appeal to a judge who is probably so narcissistic themselves that, positions of power, it's a job position where there's a lot of narcissistic individuals, and they can't really see the problem in front of them because it so closely represents who they are as a person. So you're trying to prove how toxic, how abusive this person is, and the judge is like, so what? That's who I am too.
Yeah. Yes. So that's a losing battle to prove to the judge, and not in every circumstance, right? But in many, or I don't really know. You're the expert in this. If you're saying many, I certainly,
it's a lot. I mean, yeah. In the, attorney in the law profession in general, I have a lot of close friends who are family court attorneys, and they'll say the same thing. Our profession is full of narcissists. And so those people go on to be judges, and that's part of the problem in the family court system. But one of the things I help people do is manage your expectations appropriately. If you're looking for the court to validate you, to give you justice, that's not where it's going to come from.
So what can women do? If somebody comes to you and says, okay, I can't overthrow the whole point of the court system, but I do want to protect my kids, what steps do they take?
One of the things I try to help people do is profile the type of person you're up against. It's so easy for us to say, they're all the same. People read one of my books and they'll email me and say, oh my gosh, my ex is exactly the same as yours. And yeah, at a surface level, yes, but there are so many other intricacies. You have to, dig deep. Were they made fun of in junior high, or where are their buttons? Where are their triggers? When do you not want to push those? Or when does your attorney maybe, they do want to push a button that is going to get the person's mask to drop? And, there are some realities in the system. It is a 50-50 custody world. And so, being realistic about what your expectations are. But I tell people, even if I don't believe anything is final in family court. I am of the mindset that, okay, great. If they're going to give you 50-50 and that's your starting point, we're going to chip away at it. We'll accept this as temporary, but nothing is final. And so how do we, one of the things people lose sight of is a narcissist or a high conflict person, they are not really capable of parenting. It's selfless. It can be tedious work. They use the kids for their Instagram feed, for their own gratification, but, left on their own, they're really not capable of 50-50. So even if they win, once the spotlight is off, I say, you want to get to a different vantage point. Look at this from, time hop 3 years. In 3 years, with the high that they're getting off the court in the rear view mirror, no longer giving them that high, are they really capable? Or are they going to be canceling their parenting time for the next blonde, or, job offer, or, travel opportunity? A lot of times they are there, they will build the case for you. And then you're in the background documenting all of those things and then putting it back in front of the court when it's appropriate.
So I had someone ask me the question about documentation. And I want to clarify what you said because they've probably heard this before. So it can be that you accept the 50-50 and then the other parent doesn't take all that time, right? And if you're profiling that person, tends to be, you're saying that tends to be a better strategy than fighting for the death for 70-30 when you would have ended up with the kids the same amount of time anyway.
I see people spend $1 million on attorney fees to get to a 50-50 custody arrangement where, you could have, most of their buttons is money. So that's usually where I go first and say, I'd be willing to leverage, you can have this house or you can have that car, if I can have this type of schedule. That's what's important to me. There are ways to see, when
but maybe not say that's important to you, right? Like maybe like sneak that
right. That's where you hold your cards close at all times, because if you tell them this is what I want, that's where they're gonna go.
Yeah, I was like, well, maybe we should stop right.
That's what your attorney needs to know. And that's why having an attorney who understands, a lot of people, they have the false sense of security that if their attorney understands narcissist, they're going to be able to rush the courtroom and, have him painted as a narcissist. And you want your attorney to understand these people so that they can negotiate on your behalf. So no, and thank you for clarifying that, because you don't ever want to show the narcissist what's important to you. They know though that it's the kids, but if you have energy about the house in, Florida that you really want, then they're going to really want that house. So, it's finding out where your leverage is to, for example, here's one thing that I did early on. I knew my ex-husband, it was all about money for him. So I offered to set our custody schedule in a place, it was close to 50-50, where he wouldn't have to pay as much support. And I said, great, let's leave that there. And then this will be the schedule. So our parenting time schedule didn't actually match what he was paying. And that was one strategy, and one that works, because most of these people fight for 50-50 just to lower their child support amount. So if you can make that a moot point, And you can't do that yourself. You need your attorney because you don't want to be seen as bartering for your kids' human life for money. But a skilled attorney can use those negotiations.
So what about maybe the opposite parent? What about maybe the opposite? No, I've got to like hover in on my kids, save them from their mother, be the everything in their eyes. Maybe they don't have as much other stuff going on in their life, so they make their kids their life and use that to punish you. What about the strategies with that parent?
And that's harder because, the people who truly base their identity on, the kids are extensions of themselves, and that is their world. It's a much more difficult. In those situations, I tell people your energy goes towards strengthening your kid's foundation, because it's a lost cause in a lot of situations. If someone says they want 50-50 in the court system, unless they're sitting in the courtroom with a heroin needle sticking out of their arm, the court's going to give them 50-50. And so, and that's where we have to be the strongest, most centered versions of ourselves so we can show up and model what healthy looks like for our kids. Because, and I am a firm believer that even with 50-50, you have more power to give your kids a good foundation and show what healthy looks like than you would have if you stayed. I have so many people say to me, I should have stayed. No, you shouldn't have, because then your kids are growing up seeing this is what a relationship is. This is what a marriage looks like. And
this is what being a woman means.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They're going to go on to repeat the cycle either as the abuser or as the abused, highly likely. And so I believe even if you only have 50% parenting time, you show up and you be the best parent. And I'm a huge believer in teaching our kids what red flags are at an early age, teaching them, I know my truth, so that gaslighting doesn't come into play, empowering your kids. And you can do that without ever pointing the finger at their unhealthy parent, without ever saying a negative thing about them. And you shouldn't. One of the things I pride myself on is no matter what was going on in our case, I've never, when my kids were little, when we were in the court system, never said anything negative about their dad. But do they know, what red flags are? And did they come to me and say, dad did this and it was a red flag? I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Tell me about it.
Yeah. And great response. Right? I can't believe it. Great response. Right. One thing that with my kids, I teach them just a good general parenting. This has nothing to do with like a divorce or not, just good parenting. What do your eyes see? What do your ears hear? Like, what are you picking up on in your intuition?
Right.
That's just good human skills. That has nothing to do with parenting, with anything along those lines. It's skills I wish my parents had taught me.
Right.
More so than trusting, different people that in my life I shouldn't have trusted.
Right. And it's, I've told this story before about, I was at a donut shop a couple of years ago, and there was a mom in line in front of me with her 5-year-old. And she asked the little girl, how many donut holes do you want? And the little girl said 5. They got up closer to the counter, and the little girl said, no, actually, I want 6. And the mom got down at her level and said, your intuition told you that 5 was the right number for you. So let's stick with that number.
Wow.
So powerful. And it's those little everyday teaching moments because the unhealthy parent aside, our world has toxic people all over. Our kids have to be equipped to go into the world, whether it's a boss or a teacher or a friendship. They have to, the intuition is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think about documenting, if you're afraid there's going to be a court case coming up or you're looking to change the custody schedule, what does it mean to document?
That's a big topic. In general, one of the things, and I teach a documentation course where I basically replicate my entire system for people. But the overview, you document everything. You document the little day-to-day things. You never know when those are going to be a big thing. And I share from my own story, you know, I have boxes and boxes of documentation, and 98% of that has never seen the light of day. No one in the court system has ever seen it, but it's that 2% that protected my kids. But I hear people when, they're frustrated, they're saying, I'm doing all of this work and no one is paying attention to it. And I tell them, every single thing you document, and, you never know when you're going to be assigned a custody evaluation or a mediator or someone who maybe that does spark their interest, and then they want to see more. And then that's your opportunity. You just never know when those times are going to come. And there are people who love the paper documentation system, people who prefer to do it all electronically. There's the best of both worlds. I love, there's the program like Our Family Wizard. I love that program for communication. I don't for documentation. I prefer to have all of my documentation in my control, not putting it in a third party app. So, I do all of mine in Dropbox, Word documents, charts, graphs, things like that.
But what counts as documentation? Like if there's like a mother in fear that like I have to work and I can't make it to my son's basketball game, and he's going to like document and say that I'm not a show up parent. Like what should people be watching out for? And then what's just like,
You have to choose your battles wisely is one of my main messages. Is there are things that the court cares about. They become so callous to seeing the significant abuse that the majority of stuff we put in front of the court, they see as petty. And so you do want to, I'm a fan of I call it strategic communication. I have an online course on that also, but it's very much what you're putting in writing is not for him or for her. It's for the court. My mentality, and I actually had a Post-it on my computer back in the day when I was in my battle, and it said, to judge, CC ex-husband. And that was my mindset, is I'm not writing for him, I'm writing to the court. And so in that situation, if I had to work and had to miss, I would be preemptive and send an email just saying, hey, I just got notified that I have to work on this day. I'm not going to be able to make Junior's game, but I will be there for the next one. And that's, the courts understand that people have lives. So I'm one, I feel the gray rock communication hurts parents tremendously in family court. I think that and I used to promote the heck out of it when I was early in my own battle, because when you find a tool like that, you're so excited. You can, because it gives you a protection, it gives you a boundary. I call it yellow rock communication, and it's still the same concept. You're still a gray rock. You're not giving them an emotional feed, but it's got a touch of yellow, a touch of common courtesy, politeness, because again, it's for the court. When people gray rock with their communication, the court sees them as rigid and uncompromising, and that it comes across as you hate the other person. And so then every problem in your case can be chalked up to your hatred for this other person. And you don't ever want that to come across. So
maybe, I'm asking a strategy. So if it was like, hey, they say I'm going to do something, and you say, well, that's not going to work for me, but here's 3 options that could.
Right.
Is that like a better solution than just saying
Absolutely.
no? Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. So that comes across as trying to work with the other parent.
Absolutely. And that's where, the way I describe it is, if I had a healthy co-parent on the other end, I would be the best co-parent that they had ever seen. That is my authentic truth. So I will always operate from that place. If I am gray rocking, that's not who I am. And so, and when the court is having to make a judgment call because they don't know either of you, you're not operating as who you really are when you take that communication approach. One of the things I did, if my ex-husband didn't have the girls on, let's say Easter, I would send him a picture of the girls with the Easter bunny. And I'd say, hey, you know, I know you don't have them this year. I just thought you'd like to have a picture to share with your family. That goes against every gray rock communication rule book out there, but it served me very well in court, and it was who I really am. Those are the types of things I would do.
So how did it serve you well in court, where it made it, what is that? How did that help you?
It showed who I really was as a parent and as a human. It showed that I was trying, even though he was being difficult and abusive, that I kept trying to co-parent with this person, that I was able to put my kids first, you know, above my feelings about him.
So are there any like major pitfalls to watch out for, obviously, other than addiction, sexual addiction, you know, having your kids in a chaos? Like if there's like even on the flip side, like I know a lot of your work has been, you know, getting the child, but what about a mother who's worried about losing her child, or a man worried about losing their child? Or is there anything that you've seen in this work that you're like, do not do these 3 things, other than obvious addictions and violence in your own home?
Right. You know, the big seed that gets planted in the family court system, and we touched on it offline earlier, is alienation. My personal opinion, it is junk science, has no basis in reality. But, you know, a lot of times when an abuser's own actions or who they are turn the child away from them, because what child wants to run and jump into the arms of the person who is abusing them or their other parent? All the other party has to do is say alienation, and the court immediately hones in on that. And it's a way that abusers turn the tables on their victims. And so I do see, it's mainly moms that I work with, but as I mentioned to you offline, I was raised by my dad. I'm very pro healthy parent, and I don't care what your gender is. So I tend to use male, female pronouns, abuser, victim, but that, you know, it could be anyone. The reality is, when an abuser is trying to turn their tables, all they have to do is say alienation. And I do see moms lose their kids, and I see some dads lose their kids. And that's where, for me, strategy was so important, because I know the reality of the system. I was accused of alienation for 10 years. And so going above and beyond to say, hey, here's a picture of the kids in their Halloween costumes, or sitting with the Easter bunny, you know, a parent who is truly trying to turn their kids against the other parent would never do those things.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, anything else other than that you just say, oh, watch out, I wish everyone knew in the world knew not to do this, you know, or to do this? Yeah.
I would just say, overall, I cannot emphasize the importance of choosing your battles wisely. I see people get caught up in things that, you know, ask yourself, will it matter in a year? Or will it matter in 3 years? And that was kind of my check-in for myself, because when you're under constant attack, it wears you down, and you start to jump at every little thing. And, you know, the family court system, the lazy way is for them to stamp your case as high conflict and blame both of you. And so that's where keeping your side of the street sparkling clean, letting go a lot of it, and just, you know, choosing your battles wisely, so that the courts can focus on the kids' safety and well-being, and not, you know, who paid a $5 copay and who didn't, and all of that.
And what if there is you know, I know someone in my mind right now, and there's a real concern of safety, sexual abuse in the other situation. What advice would you have for her, or in the documentation case?
Sexual abuse allegations in the family court system, and I'm not an attorney, I'm not qualified to give legal advice, but they are the single, you know, scariest accusation to lodge against someone. If I were personally in that situation, I would navigate it so carefully. I would, I would never point fingers at the other person unless I could absolutely prove that they were doing it. My position would be, these are the things I'm hearing. These are the things I'm witnessing. I have no idea who is responsible. All I care about is that someone investigates this because I have concerns. And not, for me, I would never report things on my own to child welfare services. I would let a mandated reporter do that. And it's just, that's where having a really skilled attorney to help someone navigate that type of thing, I see people make mistakes like that all the time.
Like thinking, yeah, and I don't know, this is like a message I got on Messenger a while back, and her response was, why don't courts do something about this? I think my child's being sexually molested, and right. That's very limited information I had on this subject. But so you're saying that launching forward an investigation as if it's coming from you could actually backfire on her, because then it makes it seem like she's doing it as revenge or something?
It's what I see as an advocate, that, there is this false belief that mothers file sexual abuse allegations to get a leg up in custody. I will tell you, doing this for 10 years, there has never been a single sexual abuse case that I have suspected that someone is lying to get a leg up in custody. It's just, who would do that to their child? Put a child through the interviews, the forensic exams. I think one of the, things that is just baffling to me, if you look at the rates of child sexual abuse, I think, if you go YMCA, there's some organizations that have solid data on our country as a whole. And I think it's 1 in 4 girls by the age of 18 has experienced some type of sexual abuse. You then go look at the court system, and you're lucky if 1% are being recognized as being sexually abused. So how do we know as a country that we have 25% of our young women being sexually abused by the time they turn 18, but the court turns a blind eye to it and takes custody away from moms when those allegations? It's a terrifying topic, and one that I see play out, and it typically doesn't end well.
So what you're saying is, sometimes you've seen a mother be afraid, then a mother bring it up, and that mother actually lose custody because it made it look like she was.
We actually have a law in California that if you lodge that type of accusation and and it's unfounded, which I venture out and say 95% of them are unfounded, until the child is walking around with a bullhorn pointing out the perpetrator, most of these are unfounded. Then the person accused of abuse can turn the tables and file for full custody if it's unfounded. And I know there are other states that have similar laws in place like that. And so I can't emphasize enough how scary of an accusation that is to make. And that's where an attorney who believes you, who is your voice, you don't have the energy to be educating your attorney on these things. Yeah. And you need, and they're hard to find, attorneys who truly show up and truly care. They're trained in law school to turn that empathy switch off and see you as a case number. And that's a huge part of the problem.
So anything else? So the things that you've seen moms or dads lose, situations that were unfounded, or like, oh my gosh, this person just didn't know. They were trying to do the right thing and just didn't know. Anything else that you have seen in your patterns?
I think just in general, keep in mind, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. And the majority of family court is he said, she said. And, that's where I think as, healthy individuals, we project. We learn a lot about projection as it relates to the narcissist, but we project our own positive qualities, traits, honesty, ethics onto people who, may not be deserving of that projection. And so, we can't expect the court to believe what we're saying just because we're saying it. We know who we are as a person, but they don't. It's so much of it in family court is about painting a picture, and that picture is being painted of you also. The court is making a determination of where the problems are and whatnot. So, it truly, it comes, and that's where people can get really frustrated. And I've been there where who this person is, but nobody else does. And the threshold of what's acceptable in the family court system when it comes to abuse, because when they're seeing horrific, and I have seen things in family court cases that keep me awake at night. So when a judge is seeing these things on a regular, ongoing basis, they become calloused and desensitized. And so the majority of things we put in front of them, they're kind of going, mentally putting it on a scale. Well, compared to this case that I saw yesterday, this is down here. And so just keeping in mind, you have to go into them with proof. It can't be he said, she said, and really scrubbing it down and keeping it focused on the child, and how the child is being affected. That, was the majority of my case, was trying to showcase, it's not about me hating him, or, it has nothing to do with us. This is how my kids are being affected.
And affected, like, they're not sleeping, their grades are slipping. What does that mean, affected? My kids are being affected.
So in my case, it was regression. It was regression with sleep. It was regression with school, potty training early on. And then, again, that falls into the he said, she said category. It does tend to be a red flag, in my opinion, for the courts when one parent is saying everything's great at my house, and the other parent is saying, no, all these problems are happening. And so that's where, if you are documenting all of that regression and those things that you are seeing, then look outside of your circle and go, okay, the preschool teacher is noticing this too. That could potentially, if they can put it in writing so that we're all aware that the teacher is seeing the regression. Or, I know in my case, my daughter would come home 4 years old, and on the weekends that her dad had her, the teacher would notice her being very out of sorts, disconnected, not really wanting to participate. And then on the weeks I had her, it would be a different child. And so over time, when other people are seeing these things, then it only strengthens your case.
And do you have any advice on getting people to advocate for you? Because, most teachers in that situation, they just don't want to do it, right? Or get involved.
I think a huge part of the problem is that unless someone has been down this path personally, they just don't get it. And some schools actually prohibit teachers from getting involved in cases, and they just want to be, not have any involvement. So for me, it was, getting things in writing. So if my daughter's teacher said something to me in passing after class, I would go home and I would email her and I would say, in an effort to memorialize our conversation today, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. And I would CC my ex-husband on that. And then if she wrote back and confirmed, then I've painted the picture and got her weigh in on it, and he's notified. So it's things like that. When my daughters would come home with horrible sunburns, or horrible diaper rash, I would take them to the pediatrician or to emergent care and say, hey, you know what? I know you can't cure a sunburn, but I guess at this point, I'm just looking for it to be documented that these are the types of things happening while in their dad's care. And so that was going towards building my case of neglect, when it came to, him being completely inept as a parent.
Oh, Tina, thank you so much. This is such great info, hard info. Hard info.
Hard topic, yeah.
I know, Sandra Brown as well. And in our conversation, she goes, nobody wants to talk about this stuff. It's all horrible. And we were like giggling about it. And it was like these really horrific subjects. And we're just like, You
That's
know,
right.
you
You
gotta
got to make lemonade wherever
gotta
you can.
say,
And yeah,
thank you so much for being
yeah.
here and being a part on helping everyone else. What information do you want people to know about you? Buy your book, One Mom's Battle. Tell us where we can get a little more Tina if we want it.
Yeah, my main website is onemomsbattle.com. There you can find my books. I have 5 different books. One of them is for kids. It's called Lemonade Life, and it's teaching kids how to take lemons and make them into lemonade. No matter what, it's not focused on personality disordered parents. It's just in general, life gives us lemons. I'm on TikTok now. You can find my little.
What? Do you do like a dance? Like you like?
I have not done a dance yet. I have a 15-year-old and she would be mortified.
That's hilarious. Yeah, you shoot fire. You have like a dragon behind you or something. Yeah.
And then every Friday morning at 7 a.m. Pacific time, I do on YouTube on the One Mom's Battle channel, I do Coffee with Tina. So people could throw questions out there and we talk through all of these topics.
Oh my gosh, that's such great information. Thank you for helping us on our journey to becoming toxic person proof.